All right, welcome. Good afternoon to Career Conversations. And we are here with another guest on another month, entering year three of Career Conversations. And we will start the interview in about a minute and a half. We'll hand it off to Katie, who is going to give you the opening codes. All right, and welcome to Career Conversations. We are pleased to have yet another guest with us today, and we are um, going to hand it off to Lori Scharf, who's going to do the introductions and interview our guest. And welcome once again, everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Tonight, we are happy to have Chari Chauvin, who is Senior Operations Manager, Global Apparel at Nike. And Chari, if you could tell us a little bit about your vision loss and how that impacts your daily life, what you may see and how that impacts your work, as well as a little bit about what you do as a senior operations manager, so people get an understanding of both your job and how you may function in your job.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for dialing in. So yes, I am a senior operations manager at Nike. My sort of at a high level, operations manager is a very broad phrase, and so at a high level, we kind of are in charge of managing processes and making sure that things flow smoothly, holding people accountable to those processes and best practices. Specifically, what I do is I work in global apparel and accessories, which is also known as equipment, so like backpacks, etc. And my team, we manage the ordering by process for samples, so product that goes out to our sales reps, and then the sales reps then takes that product to accounts, and then the accounts decide whether they want to buy that product and put it in the market. So we work about a year ahead of where things are in the market. So right now, we're about to buy spring 25 samples. So that's product that will be in the market next spring in a year. So we work with the developers, who are the people who actually decide on what goes into, like I'm wearing a jacket right now that has a couple of zippers. And so they decide what material will be used for the jacket, colors, what kind of trims, how long the zipper should be, all of that. So I work with them, or we work with them. And once they decide all of that, then we go ahead and place that buy. And then we work with those factories who are making the product. Indirectly, I work with people who are Nike employees as well. And they are working at liaison offices within those countries where we manufacture the product. So I work through them to make sure everything ships on time and gets where it needs to go. So that's kind of that piece of it. So vision loss, my diagnosis is glaucoma. I was diagnosed about 11 years ago. It's they call severe stage glaucoma. And I have about 5% visual field in my right eye with about 2150 vision in that eye. In my left eye, I see nothing but light and motion. So I have a very, very narrow, as many of you know, field of vision. And my one eye doctor likened it to looking through one of those little red coffee stir sticks. So that's kind of that story.
Okay. And what kinds of technology do you use to assist you at work, to perform maybe parts of your job?
Yeah, so it's interesting because of the nature of the work I do, I work in style numbers. So each of the garments we have has its own style number. So using any kind of text to speech just would not work for me. So I'm only using right now Microsoft magnification software. I've used Zoom text and other things before, but they tend to be a little buggy with some of the specialized programs that we have here, or I guess proprietary programs that we have here. So I just have found that those things have not helped me, and I will just use the Microsoft magnification.
Now, this may be a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. Now you say you work in style numbers. Do you also have to look at maybe images of products, or do you get more of like a product specification list that might say,
Yeah.
this type of shoelace or this type of zipper? So is it more like you're looking at wording or number descriptions, or do you have to visually see product on a computer screen?
No, I don't have to visually see product. It's kind
Ah,
of the
okay.
bummers about the job is because we do all the ordering, but we never actually see the samples. So, we work in, Excel for the most
Hmm.
part, other
Hmm.
programs as well, but Excel is primarily where we download things to. There are some things that are visual, but again, I can magnify, and it's not primary in my job at all. And I just have to say, we have a great team there's only 4 of us who do this for the entire company across the globe and all the different geographies. And we work great as a team. And if I need help, they will help me.
That's very important, having a team that's very workable.
For sure.
So do you travel at all as part of your job? You said you have contact with other people working on products in other countries, or are you primarily stateside?
Primarily stateside. We used to travel some to other countries, but they just kind of cut that back well before COVID, actually. And the people who need to be out in the field are more the design teams who are actually
Hmm.
the factories doing that kind of design and development work. But we're operations and our function is really to support those teams, not to actually assist or do that type of work. So unfortunately, no, not too much travel, although I have gone to Hong Kong and couple of other places overseas. So.
Great. So I just want to remind people while we're speaking, if you have questions, we do have the question and answer box open, and you can type your questions into there, and we will answer them in a little while. Um, are there any aspects of your job that you find to be maybe challenging? Because of your vision, or have you that maybe are more stressful for you?
Mhm.
And have you found a workaround for that type of situation?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna say most of it is more of the not so much in the real practical thing is just um sort of how vision loss affects me more social emotional at work
Hmm.
um and had to adjust to that. I started losing my vision 11 years ago, but I've been an employee here for 23 years. So I was fully sighted when I started working here. And what happened was when I lost my vision over a period of 6 months. So I was, driving, and then within 6 months, I was learning how to use a white cane. So it's a super big shift, obviously, in for me, but also for other people around me, that my coworkers. It's a huge place, right? We have probably at that time probably 3 or 4 thousand people on campus, and now we're double that. So, I there's a lot of people to navigate around and through, but I knew a lot of people here from before, and what I found when I was using the white cane is that people stopped approaching me or talking to me like they would before. So if you walk around campus, people are like, "Hey, Chari, how are you doing?" or whatever. But when I used the white cane, it was like they were afraid to kind of address me, and so that was a difficult transition to make. It was super isolating for me. And then I think, just had to learn kind of new ways of working and doing things that I had done previously with no problem. So just learning that it was a bit of a curve. And I think also knowing what to ask for, that was a really hard thing because like, we'll help you whatever you need. It's like, I don't even know what I need. So that was a really hard one for me to figure out. And it took a while, and I finally figured it out. And people are like, you need a big monitor. I'm like, actually, no, because I have no field of vision. So I would just be scanning back and forth all day with my one little coffee stir stick holes.
Right. So you'd have this huge, monitor, but you're still searching
Exactly.
in that small area of
Yeah,
vision to find what you need.
you're
Yeah,
exactly
that
right.
totally makes sense.
So now I just use an 11-inch screen, and that works. And I still scanning back and forth, but it's a lot smaller.
A lot less real estate.
Yeah, my neck feels better at the end of the day.
That's true
So
too.
yeah, and so I
So,
think was the biggest struggle, was just figuring out what it was that I needed. And that has now, that's good now.
Mhm. And I know you're a guide dog user, so did you find after you got a guide dog that things were very different with respect to colleagues? Do you feel like you were more approachable or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of novel too because we were the first, we are the only that I know of team on campus of any type of service dog. And Nike is very they have a beautiful campus, and so like you can't even bring a dog to go for a walk on the grounds at
Mhm.
all. So it was a bit of a learning curve for them as well. I got stopped by security several times until, I sent them an email with our picture and explained the whole thing. And then they've been cool ever since. But at first it was like, what is going on? I was stopped several times. It's like, what is that? So that was that piece of it. So, but I am kind of proud of just being the first ones on campus. And I feel like we've set a good tone for, anybody who comes in the future. But um, for me, sort of partnering, it's made a huge impact having my guide dog's name is Haviland. She was named after one of the veterinarians at Guide Dogs for the Blind, and she's a 5-year-old yellow Labrador Retriever. And she just working with her, I just have a lot more confidence. And I think they serve an amazing social bridge for people. So people will come up to me that I don't know at all and just say, "Oh, your dog is so cute," and you can start a whole conversation with that. It would be nice if people addressed me first, but that's the way that's the way it is. Like people do that. I do that on my own. Walking in the neighborhood, and oh, who's this little dog? But eventually, people kind of come around to, oh, and how are you? Like they get that socially probably isn't real nice to just ask about the dog and not about the person. So, but it has definitely helped. Just my feeling of isolations that I had when I was using the white cane. And I like to be super clear that that's just my own personal preference. There's a lot of people who use white cane as a mobility tool and they do perfectly fine with it. And it's nothing wrong. And I still use the white cane, right? I have to, because there's times when the dog may be sick or for whatever reason, I may decide not to take her somewhere. But I prefer using a guide dog as my mobility tool. So
Oh, now I know this was a career change for you, correct?
uh,
Like a second career?
that was my third career. I
A
started
third,
as a
okay.
nurse. Yeah, I was a nurse originally, a social worker, and then Nike. It's just it's, there's no good reason for it. It's just all different things that I have done. I'm about ready for my fourth career, but for now, I'll stay here. But, yeah. Um, so yeah, it's been interesting. And if I can back up for 1 second in terms of
Sure.
the work and having a guide dog at work, I wanted to say too, like it was really important when I first got a dog to set us up for success at work. Having been the first team here, people weren't familiar with it. And
Hmm.
so I did a few things to set that success up, such as, informing the team ahead of time, like here's what's going to happen. GDB, Guide Dogs for the Blind, has a flyer. I think it's called Meeting a Guide Dog Team or something like that. I put that up in the lunchroom. I did like a brown bag lunch, ask me anything kind of thing. I had done a couple of, used to be a child development center here, like a daycare for employees with children. So I did a talk there. And I think all of those things helped to set us up with success. And then what happened was uh, people I didn't really even know, they kind of became my advocates or allies too. So they would, I heard if I'll go to the restroom down the hall, I don't take the dog. I come back and I hear like, oh no, you can't pet her. She's still working, or even though she's not, doesn't have her harness. Like people become,
I've been there, I
yeah,
know.
yeah. So it's great to be able to have those conversations with people. And I know this
Yes.
isn't guide dogs, but hey,
No, no,
you
I think
It's great.
it's really important
know.
information for people to hear. And as somebody who personally has had dogs that I had a golden retriever who just loved everybody, and I had
Oh
to
yeah.
be I
The
was
golden
very
way.
loose at one point with socialite, letting her say hello to people. And then it
Mhm.
was like I had to rein everybody in and say, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And so that was my big mistake.
I do
Um,
at the end of the day, just before I take her off a tie down and get the harness out, I let her say hello to a couple of my teammates, and that's the happy time for everybody. So
Can I
yeah.
ask a question, Lori?
Go ahead.
So, Shari, you had mentioned that your vision changed in in the job you're currently in.
yeah.
What advice would you give to the employee out there, the person who's working, who may have vision adjustments on the job and may be worried and not know what to do next? What based on what you experienced, what would you say? What's your sage advice?
Um, I, everybody is different, right? But
Sure.
I don't keep it a secret. Like a lot of people, I feel like when they have vision loss, they will keep it to themselves, and then they have these struggles. And people are like, what's going on with so and so? They're messing up this or messing up that, and it's like there's no shame in it, and it's like just share if you can, if you're comfortable. And then, like I was talking about with the dog, it's like the more you talk about it, the more allies and advocates you end up having.
Hmm.
If you have you know, if you have that kind of relationship with your boss, like just have that discussion and say, here's some things I'm really struggling with. And depending on the company, like work with your HR team with accommodations. And but I guess my biggest one is don't be afraid to let people know if you are having any difficulties or you need help with something, because no one's going to advocate for you if they don't understand what's going on. So that's what that's what I would say is just be brave, speak up. I mean, we're all resilient, right? We wouldn't be on this call if we weren't resilient. We didn't know how to use the tools, use what we have as
Yeah.
a positive tool, right? As a creative tool to get her to uh do things creatively that other people do just normally is not the right word, but you know what I mean? It's just like we have to think outside the box sometimes to get the same things done that someone who doesn't have vision loss can
Oh yeah.
do.
Yes, and I think particularly for people who may be new to vision loss or dealing with changes in existing vision, it's difficult to sometimes know what you need. And that's where, reaching out to resources like the APH Connect Center and your vocational rehab or a local agency that may provide services can really be beneficial. But even finding those services sometimes can be challenging, and knowing when you can when are you ready? It's a whole psychological side of thinking, okay, I am ready to to reach out for help. It's a difficult position to be in. Okay. So I like to ask if people have any like words of wisdom for people maybe new to like a career in what you're doing. Like do you have anything you'd like to share with people that might be interested in your field?
In my field. I didn't come into it sort of naturally. Like I didn't go to school to become an operations manager. And so I started from, I worked in the distribution center, pulling orders, etc. So I guess, I'm not saying that I've climbed the ladder because
What
I'm
but
like very high up, but starting,
but
don't be afraid.
that's
Yeah.
important. Let's explore that a little. So
Yeah. Don't be afraid to just
it's
start somewhere.
Mhm. Right. So you started out in the distribution center, and then what gave you the motivation to look into other areas of the company?
I think, the thing here that's really wonderful is just there's always some kind of a path or connection. Making connections with people is one of the biggest ways that you uh, go anywhere at this company, like who you connect with and do informational interviews with them and just understand more of the processes and what drives the work here. Having that understanding helps you figure out, oh, maybe I'm interested in this. I liken it to when I was a nurse. When I was in nursing school, we had different clinical internships that you would go from rotation to rotation, right? And every single one I went to, I'm like, that's the one I want to be in. I love this kind of work. It's like, so you just have to learn all the different things that you could possibly do here, and then figure out, this is the path I want to take. Mine was a little bit more, I'm kind of in the same field as I was when I first started. So I'm still working in samples. I worked in samples when I first started, different end of it. So I'm a lot closer to where the product is designed and developed. Before I was at the end stage where it was already produced. So I knew people in samples, and then I was asked to become an operations person at the distribution center where I supervised people. And then from there, I applied for another job in operations, and then, just kind of morphed into things. So none of it was like this planned, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. It was more organic, which is how I like to be. I'm not real, some people are very much like, I want to be this, and then I want to be that, and then I want to be this. I remember when I went for an interview one time a few years ago here, someone asked, that question, what do you want? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want to do? And so I gave what I thought was a pretty good answer. And they actually asked me, if you don't say you want to be the CEO, then you're probably not right for this job. It's like, no, I'm not, because I don't want to be the CEO. And I want to do what I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. I think, to me, that's something that is important. Like, it's okay to do what you're doing. You don't have to always be going to the next level. So
Right. So you're comfortable in the position that you're in now. You've climbed through various areas of the company, but you definitely have no interest in being all the way at the top.
Yeah.
That's very understandable. And it's an honest answer.
Yeah, work-life balance, right? It's not that I don't have ambition. It's just that I can balance that with what I do outside of work, and my ambition is more on other things now than it is just work.
Yeah, that's an important area to consider, is work-life balance. It's definitely an area that people need to consider. Okay, and Richard, do you have, or Katie, do you have any questions before we start looking at chat and Q&A questions?
This is Katie. I have a question, if I may. I noticed, earlier as you kind of explained your journey, you said you went to school for nursing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then what that you've kind of had quite the shift. Do you mind delving into that a little bit, and how that came about?
From nursing, I became a social worker. So what I found when I was a nurse is that I wasn't the people had mental health needs, and I wasn't able to address just because of the time it took. The nursing was very time consuming and caring for someone, but then you realize people were needing to talk and all that. And I was really interested in that. So I went back to school and got a master's degree in social work. And I did that for about 12 years. And then I just kind of got burned out on it. I worked with a population that was very difficult to work with. And I decided that I needed to do something totally different, which I did. And sadly, the pay was pretty equal between, a for-profit company and a nonprofit. So it wasn't like a huge shift in terms of financial, but it was a huge shift in sort of mindset. And I'm somebody who can adapt to lots of different situations, and I was perfectly fine doing that. And I got my heart work doing, volunteer stuff. So this isn't my heart work, but I like it. I like it. It does what I need it to do. And the people here are amazing. And then I volunteer outside of here for the things that soothe my heart.
That's great. Again, back to the work-life balance.
Yeah.
It's very important.
And I think we've got some really cool questions in the Q&A. I think we'll start there if we want. I asked my question, so I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a question asking if fatigue is an issue for you, and if so, how do you manage it? I'm not sure if they mean visual fatigue or just in general.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I would say that I can't say I've gotten used to it. I think maybe I deal with it. Definitely fatigued. My eyes are super tired. End of the day, I get headaches sometimes. The light is either too bright or not bright enough. It's just like, finding that sweet spot is really hard. And I think I've just learned to adapt. Having a guide dog is a natural break. I have to take her out at lunch. So where a lot of people here will just work through lunch, I can't. I have to take her out and relieve her and play with her and give her a good half an hour break. So that is one thing that she makes me kind of take a break. Yeah, so it's a real thing for sure. And I've just kind of learned to adapt to it. I don't think I do anything particular other than I have turn down lights or turn up lights is what, if it's too bright, I turn it down. If it's bothering me, other than that, I don't know if anybody else has any ideas about that, but that's kind of all I do.
How about travel fatigue? Is your commute long, or do you get to work from home sometimes? What does that look like?
Well, we were working from home and then they had us come in 3 days a week and now we're up to 4 days a week. So I
Sure.
think we're gonna be getting 5 again pretty soon, but I actually do have a long commute. It takes me about an hour and a half to get to work and then an hour and a half home. So that's about 3 hours. And I live about a little over a mile from the bus. So I walk to the bus, I take the bus to a train, I take the train to a stop that's about a mile and a half from my office. So, yeah, it's a good deal of walking. It's about 7 miles a day round trip. With a walk, during lunch with the dog too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is tiring and that piece of it is hard. And I think it's something that a lot of my coworkers don't have to deal with. So I have thought about actually asking for some kind of an accommodation on that, but I haven't done that yet. To be able to allow me to work from home. What I find is that I work longer when I'm at home because I don't have that travel time. And so
True.
when
It's
I'm
a
at home,
buffer.
yeah, I'm at work at 7:30 at home. And when I, leave the house at 6:30 to get here by 8, you know what I mean? It's just different. So, but that's just kind of the way it is. And I would love to do where I'm working from home 2 or 3 days of working in the office the other 2 days. So, but that's not what the company wants. And so I think you've probably seen a lot of companies are starting to ask employees to come back to work into the office.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is a very legitimate issue because, even that you have a dog, it still is visually and physically fatiguing because it's part of just being in your environment.
It can be stressful depending
Yeah.
on what is going on mass transit or,
The weather.
Yeah, the weather, rain, Oregon.
Yep.
That's true.
All right, so our next question, kind of shifting gears here a little bit. So, what were some of the first signs you realized maybe that your vision was changing?
I don't know that I don't know that I noticed it. My eye doctor said your pressures are up. You should go see a specialist, and I did, and they did a visual field, and that's when they discovered it. I had a retinal detachment before that. I was born with high myopia, so extremely nearsighted, but I started wearing contacts when I was 9 and those hard, rigid gas permeable contact lenses.
Oh, yeah.
They're not rigid gas permeable. They weren't gas permeable. They were just hard contact lenses.
Yep.
And then I had cataract surgery, when I was like 30. And when I was a social worker, I was working with a client and I had some grocery bags in my hand and the elevator was open. And I went into the elevator kind of head first as I was picking up the bags and the door hit me in the head. And I suffered a retinal detachment. It was a complete detachment.
Wow.
And so they were able to attach it, but I had lost some vision, the peripheral vision in that eye. And then, so I knew about that, but then I was still able to drive. And then I just the doctor's like, your pressures are up, and that's kind of just went from there. So I really didn't even notice it that much because it's so kind of insidious. It's pretty slow when I first experienced it. And then it's like in 6 months of like, oh my gosh, like I definitely noticed it. So I don't know if it just kind of had been there a while or it just all of a sudden got severe. So
Yeah, and very often when it's a condition like a medical condition like you're describing, people are doing things and adjusting and accommodating, and they don't even realize what they're doing. So, you probably started scanning and not even realize that you
yeah.
were doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know after I had to relinquish my license, I started riding a bike to work. And about 4 months later, I went to the eye doctor. She's like, how are you doing without having your license? I'm like, oh, fine. I just ride my bike to work. And she's like, you what? I said, I just ride my bike. She's like, no. I'm like, why? She's like, you don't know what you're missing. You cannot see the things that are whizzing by you or whatever. I'm like, oh, yeah. So that was actually harder for me to relinquish or to give up my bike than it was my license because I felt like with my bike I could still, was getting around just
Get
fine.
places. Yeah.
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 All right. So we have a question about taking one from the chat that I saw come in. We have one asking if asking if transportation was a big issue, especially when you lost your vision and we're using a white cane and getting a guide dog. How did your staff support you in these changes?
They did a lot. I mean, um, just first with empathy, right? Just trying to give me grace, I think, and then empathy, and then they would look out for me. We often have employee meetings in a big theater here that is pitch black. It's like it's just dark, all dark, dark, dark. To me, it's pitch black. It's not, but to me, it is. And they just, they would always look out for me and ask me what I needed. And at first, it was weird asking for help or realizing that I needed help. I've always been super independent, which it was a learning curve for me that it would, and I still have struggle with it, right? I'm by nature a little bit shy and just asking for what I need can be hard. But what I realize is nobody's going to do it for you. I mean, hopefully people will come up and say, is there anything that you need help with? But if I didn't ask, I wouldn't have gotten it. And whether, you'd asked me earlier, Lori, about accommodations or things that I use at work. The other thing is that I request any presentation material ahead of time so that I can follow along on my computer. We're big into PowerPoints here up on, on a screen in a conference room. So I do ask for those things ahead of time so that I can follow along. With the same time, because what I was finding was that I couldn't keep up. And that's one thing that I definitely have to say that I've struggled with, going back to your question earlier, is that it takes me longer to do things than it did before. And that was a hard adjustment for me to realize, and it's okay. I'm getting the work done that I need to get done. I have to do it differently. It takes me a little bit longer because I do have to scan or whatever. And just knowing that it's okay. And accepting that's just part of vision loss, and your teammates understand for the most part, right? So
I half jokingly say I don't like PowerPoint because people have forgotten how to present.
yeah, sure.
And I have learned to ask over time for the PowerPoint because I like to follow along, and a lot of times they skip stuff on the slides because they think everybody's looking at it.
Exactly.
All right, so I want to move on to kind of a couple of, this one is we have a lot of great questions coming in, and keep those coming. But this one is a really, really good question, and I think it's really important to talk about. So are you expected to have the same performance level as you did prior to your vision loss? talk about how you're, performing on the job and things like
Yeah.
that.
I sort of alluded to that, I think, in the last answer, but I expect it. So and maybe that's my own issue. I don't know. I expect that I'm going to be able to do the job as well as I have done before. But I'm doing it more slowly. So it will take me longer. I may work longer to get the same thing done as I would have done before. I think that employers have to be careful about how they talk about that with their employees. So it can get into some tricky HR issues if they're not careful. So I have not had anyone directly bring up to me anything like that, but I will bring up if I'm struggling with something or there's something that I don't feel comfortable doing because it's not, because it's, there's something that we do that's calendaring, and we're using this very, very visual calendar with lots of little dot points and, points in time. And I struggle with it. And that's something that I have asked to not be responsible for because it is too difficult. So I think just for me, that's what I have to do to.
So
my
we're
ex-
back
Go
to
ahead.
the calendar issue. So are you responsible like for putting information onto the calendar, or how have you worked around that? Have
Um,
you like,
I
do you give
will,
the information to someone to put on the calendar? Do you
yeah.
have somebody look stuff up and have them put it on your calendar?
Well, what I've done is done more of a list out the gates and
Mhm.
dates, and then they'll put them on the PowerPoint with the, whatever. Or if I'm responsible for it, if I'm also just looking at it, I prefer to look at things in more linear, like a written out in
Mhm.
Word. Um, so yeah, it's funny because when we first talked, I'm like, I don't have a ton of different accommodations or things that I do. I'm like, as we talk more, I'm like, I kind of do actually. So,
Well,
but that's
and that shows it's
become my day
become
to
very
day.
natural to
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's just how I do things now. So yeah.
All right. So we have someone here who um, works in HR, and they say that companies sometimes can't imagine how they can accommodate for someone, and asking how that conversation was. Did people react when they may need to change in the environment? And are they more open now, do you think, to recruiting for other people with disabilities?
Oh, for sure. Especially here, it's a very big push, and um, I feel like we're really walking our talk in that, and uh, looking for people, specifically people with disabilities, that maybe that wasn't something that was thought of before. When I first started, when I had my vision loss, I just asked for a lighted keyboard. That's all that I asked for. And that was an ordeal because I don't think people knew what to make of it so much. But things have come a long way. And I think what I said before is like HR, they're not going to tell you what it is that you need for yourself. You have to figure that out and then go through the accommodations process, which is quite onerous, right? It's not easy to do. I'm sure it's easier in some companies than other. Here with so many employees, it's a very formal process, and you go through a third party that helps you with all of that, and then they decide whether or not they're going to accommodate you. In smaller companies, it's like, hey boss, can I have a whatever? But that's here, it's not like that anymore. So although my boss did get me a light from my desk, so I didn't have to go through an accommodation for that. But yeah, it's definitely changed over the years for the better. I think it's much more seen that employees need things to be successful in their work. So.
At any time, were you ever made aware of or introduced to or use vocational rehabilitation for your job retention, or was this just all kind of you negotiating this with your employer?
It was just me, yeah. I
Okay.
did have a an assessment years ago, but I can't remember. There wasn't anything that was helpful out of that for my role at the time.
Sure.
And let me just ask, does contrast changing help you at all?
I've
Have you ever?
tried that. Yeah, I have tried that. And I do it for some other programs like Slack, which is one of the communications
Mhm.
that we use. I have it like on the contrast mode and I like that, but in everyday things, not as much.
All right, so our next question is, we have someone who was in a senior level design position, but hid my vision loss as long as possible for fear that there would be concern that I couldn't perform a job that's so visual. It did become too obvious to hide, and it did become an issue. Any thoughts on how we can work to change culture in workplaces that do not make an effort to accommodate people with disabilities?
How we can change culture in workplaces that don't accommodate that. I'm sorry, first of all, that sounds like that was really super hard for you. I think that being as an example, being your authentic self and being an example can help with that piece. People don't know what they don't know. Like that's a pretty common phrase now, but when I was first new to blindness, I didn't really know anybody who'd been blind before I started losing my vision. I mean, I may have had a patient when I was a nurse, but not any long-term, relationship with someone who had vision loss. I didn't know how to interact with someone who was blind. And so I learned that from being around other people who are blind. I learned about etiquette and that it was okay. And so just having that experience, it's kind of like if you have never been around someone who has, MS, for example, or some kind of mobility disorder, you may not know exactly how to interact, but over time, that person will teach you just by being their own self. So I think being your authentic self, and seeing, letting people see you as that, that will slowly kind of internally change culture. I know that I live with that kind of fear that people are judging me as not being able to do something. That's something that I deal with, and I worry about that someone's going to think I can't do something because I can't see very well. That's my own work, right? I have to figure that out for myself. But I think it's important to just let people see you as you are, as much as you can. Changing culture can be slow. And I think the more we're all out there in the world, the more we impact people. And I don't know how it's never not going to happen, right? It's just the way it is. People have their own ideas about things. But as long as you're doing you and people are seeing that, like I said before, twice now, I think they become your ally. They can become your advocate. They can see that it's okay just for you just to be you, and you're doing fine. So.
And employers are kind of in a funny position because if you don't disclose that you have a disability, it can put them in a funny position. So really, um, until you have disclosed, they're not obligated to accommodate you. And you may not even know what that accommodation is when you're new to vision loss, but that is something that an employer may be able to help you figure out and look at various options. So that also needs to be part of the culture. So the employee has to have some responsibility and the employer also has to have that responsibility.
And I think you did touch on this earlier, but you mentioned Nike was headquartered in Oregon. And the question is asking about um, the public transportation that's available in your area and how, you said you have a long commute and just how that impacts you and your dog as you commute each day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky here in this pretty big metropolitan area that there's relatively good transit service. Certainly not door to door. Like I said, I have to walk quite a bit to get from A to B, but I, in general, like the commute. I like the routine of it, I guess. I don't know. I guess I wouldn't like the commute so much, but I like the routine. The dog loves the routine. She loves to like, yes, we're going to work today. And so, but I'm also aware that's not how it is in other towns or cities.
Do you
I
read on your commute or anything?
no, I'm trying to be pretty heads up.
Uh,
Case, you just never know. I'm pretty cautious and try to be aware of surroundings. There's a lot of things that can happen on mass transit, as I'm sure everyone knows.
I have
Uh,
to tell you, I was a napper on my commute, and sometimes
really?
people would say to me, "How do you know when it's like the stop
Exactly.
before?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I've been lucky. I've come close, but I've been lucky."
Internal clock. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
And I don't know if any of you are, ride share. I don't typically do Uber or Lyft just because
Oh,
money.
it's such a pain with the dog.
Yeah. And then just that whole fear, like, are they gonna deny me? So I'm like, I'm stressed. I'd rather walk or take the bus or train. So
All right. Next question. What are some of your favorite parts of your job, and what are some parts that you don't like but you have to do because they're part of the job?
um this is an amazing place to work. And so what I like is I love the people in general. Like it's just a very, it's a sports company. And so sports is about teamwork and camaraderie, and that's always forefront here. Um, and it's an incredible campus. Just very blessed in that sense to be in such a beautiful environment. So I love the environment. I love the people. I like the work. I'm just gonna be honest. It's always new. That's what I think one of the things I like about it, it's always new. So we work in seasons, right? As I said, we did spring 25 and then we just are wrapping up holiday 24. So every time a season changes, something is new. We're constantly recreating processes or um, starting new initiatives. And so that piece of it I like because you never are stagnant in your job. I've been here, a long time, but it's never the same from 4 months ago. So I think that's one thing that I really do enjoy, that you're always having to adapt. And sometimes that's not. Sometimes like, can we just like leave something alone for 4 months? But in general, I like the newness of it, right? And just always changing. I don't like, let's see. Well, I think probably there's a lot of layers here, and so it's hard to move, that analogy about turning a big ship. It's really hard to make a lot of significant change because there's so many levels and layers and groups and departments that you have to kind of get things through before you can make any real significant change. But it's possible. It's just harder than you being able to say, okay, I'm going to do this today, totally different than how I did it yesterday. If it impacts anybody else, you've got to bring in all those other people too. So.
Yeah.
All right. Next, what would your dream career be?
Working for Guide Dogs for the Blind.
Right. I think that's every alumni's dream. That would be
Yeah.
my answer to that question.
Yeah.
Love everything they've done and love it. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Well, and you're close to their campus in
Yeah.
Oregon too, so that's not a bad thing.
And I may have dreamt this. Do you puppy raise or puppy sit or
Yeah,
something
puppy
like that?
sit. So we went through
Oh,
puppy raising, but decided that was not for us. Just
uh-huh.
thing. But we do puppy sits, and then we do foster care too. So we do a lot of foster care.
Oh,
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Any
That
way I
is
can
great.
give back to them, I will do it. So I do a lot of
Yeah.
different speaking engagements specific to
So it's a great program.
Yeah.
What kind of on the more lighter side, what do you like to do outside of work? What are your hobbies and interests? And seeing that you work for a sports company, do you participate in any sports?
I was a dragon boat paddler on a blind visually impaired team. I don't know if people are familiar with that, where they have the big 3,000-pound boats, like 20 people on a boat, and there's a caller in the front of the boat and then a steers person in the back who's standing up with this giant rudder steering the whole boat, and you're all paddling in time together. So yeah, I was on that for several years. I loved it. I love water sports. I love NFL. I don't like NBA, but I like most other sports, watching and listening to that. I like tennis to play competitively back in the day. I would think I would love pickleball, but that's not going to happen. So probably it was a little fast. So yeah, I love sports. Other things, I like to walk and hike and garden. And I'm a person who likes to do chores. It sounds stupid, but I like to organize and do chores and clean and yeah.
Great. All right. And I saw something come in about what, thinking along, if you were talking to your, college student self who, what would you say? What would you take away from the experiences that you've had?
I would say just I think I said this earlier, like be brave, like just go for it and do what it is. Don't be afraid to try. And you'd be surprised, right? I mentioned it earlier. It's like we are people with vision loss or any disability, we're all resilient. We have to be. And so take that and turn it into whatever it is that you want to do or think you want to do and just try. Talk to people, make connections. And that's how we do a lot of things in this world, right? It's connections with people. Not so much the formal things where you're, applying for a job. That certainly works, but if you know somebody who works somewhere where you might want to work, just like, hey, have an informal conversation. And that can lead to other things. So you leverage the relationships that you can to maybe learn more about what it is that you might want to do, and then go for it if it's something that you think that you are interested in. I think so. I would just say just be brave. And I hate to say just do it because everybody's like, oh, you work at Nike and that's their motto, but it is true. Really avoiding trying to say that, but it's like, it's true. So
That is great. Great advice.
Yes.
Just making sure we have some good thank yous coming in. Very interesting and encouraging, people are saying. So.
And we have a question. Have you ever met a celebrity?
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was an interesting question.
Didn't know if we could ask that.
Well, she could just say yes or no.
Okay.
I have seen celebrities here. I have not met them. What they say here is that when they're on campus, they are family and
right.
And so they don't want you to go up and take pictures and ask for autographs.
No.
And all. I've seen lots of different ones.
Yeah.
And you're starstruck just like you would be anybody else. So yeah. Yeah, no, I haven't. Maybe I haven't, I just don't remember, but yeah, I work in the Serena Williams building if anybody is a big tennis fan. So, and I'm a huge Williams
fan.
Yeah. So many of the buildings are named after athletes.
It sounds like it's a large campus, like just like a size of like a college campus, maybe, or.
Yeah, and I don't know how many acres, but there's maybe 20 buildings. I actually lost track. On campus, and then in the middle of campus, there's a little they call Nike Lake, and it's just a beautiful, really beautiful place.
Good branding there,
right?
I like it.
And I think we have another couple of questions come in. Richard or Lori, I don't know if you had a chance to look at those.
I did not.
The greatest advice you ever received and the best advice you ever gave, I believe, and I think we can end with that one too, so we can do our
closing.
The best advice I ever got. I can't even think of that.
Just do it. No.
I think, gosh. I may have to call up my therapist on this one. I don't know. I honestly just think it's just be you, like that comes through. Like people see your authenticity, and I think
Right.
like authentic people, leaders here are authentic people. People see through you if you're not authentic. They lose. I mean, to me, the most impactful leaders here are authentic people, and I respect them. And when I see someone I don't feel who is as authentic, I don't have as much. I feel like I don't have as much respect for that. So I really feel like authenticity is one of the most important things that I can think of advice wise that I've probably gotten and given. So
Sure.
I
No.
do the
Yeah,
same thing about
definitely great advice. Yeah.
that, like
And
using the word in the sentence, defining the word in the sentence, but
I always say, be yourself because everyone else is taken. So,
oh, I
That's
like that.
right.
probably from a fortune cookie, but sure, this has been a great interview. And thank you for joining us on Career
Yeah, thank you.
Conversations. You're a part of a long list of amazing folks we've talked with over the past years, and thank you for your
Well,
contribution.
thank you. You all have been wonderful. I appreciate it, and best to everybody.
And if folks want to connect with our guests, you can email us at the Connect Center, which is connectcenter@aph.org, and we'll get the message to our guest this afternoon. So thank you all for participating, and that wraps up Career Conversations.
And
Thank you.
we're going to pause the recording now so Katie can give the closing code because I was so original this time.